of a better decade for quarterbacks than the 1980s. Go ahead. Oh, wait. Happy hobby. I'm David Gunnis, and if you're a sports card collector and you're working with a limited budget, that's what we do here at this series. Me and Frank, that's what we talk about all the time. Working with a limited budget, building up your collection, getting better cards for less money, all that good stuff. That's what we try to do here. Tips, videos, all that good stuff. Today, we're just going through part of my collection. We're looking at my collection of rookie cards of great quarterbacks from the 1980s, which is when I was a kid. Was there a better decade to be a kid? I think not. I submit to you, no, sir. So we'll find out. I'll go through this list of quarterbacks. We'll go look through the cards, see what you think. And this is part of a bigger idea, making little collections within your collection. Like, for instance, I've gone out of my way to try to get rookie cards of the great quarterbacks when I was a kid that I remembered following. And there's other things you can make. Do a collection of #1 draft picks for your favorite sport. Trying to get the rookie cards of those guys. A lot of times they're pretty cheap. Like if it's the NBA, getting a Derek Coleman slab, pretty cheap. Not a bad deal at all. Michael Olowokandi, you can get that for it. Somebody will pay you to take it. Trust me. But little collections like that. Some of the other things you could do is some of the best rookie cards of your favorite team. So go throughout the history of the players of your favorite team, figure out some of the rookie cards that you can get. Maybe it's the Yankees, and you're not going to be able to get the rookie cards, but maybe it's getting a card of that player, just a single card of that player. Maybe it's the last card of their career. That's a cheap way to build something cool, something fun in your collection that you can get excited about. You can get the cards from the Dream Team for NBA. I'm a big fan of the Dream Team. Another idea for another small little collection you can think about is the rookie cards of the All-Stars of the year you were born. So, for instance, I was born in 1971, so I go back to that 1971 team, look at the starting lineup from that 1971 All-Star team, and try to build on those rookie cards of those All-Stars. That might be a little expensive because I'm pretty old, and that means those cards are going to be pretty old as well. But if you were born in the 90s or the 2000s, that's a kind of a cool thing to do. Get the rookie cards from those guys that were in that year of an All-Star game. That's kind of a neat idea. So let's get right into this. The first one we're looking at is my boy, Doug Williams from 1979 Topps. Now, these aren't all rookie cards from the 80s, but they're the best the best quarterbacks of the 80s. And Doug Williams, while actually he had some pretty good seasons even before a season before 1980, Doug Williams is pretty awesome. He's the first African American quarterback to end up in the top 5 in the Heisman balloting. This was when he was with Grambling. He ended up being the first African American quarterback to be selected in the first round by my Buccaneers, who our offensive coordinator was Joe Gibbs at the time. And he spotted Doug Williams, scouted him, and he was like, man, we got to get that guy. And ended up getting them to the NFC Championship game just a year later. And then Doug Williams was also the first African-American quarterback to win the Super Bowl with the Washington Redskins under, head coach Joe Gibbs. So it all makes sense, right? All right. So we got Doug Williams there. My next one is my boy Phil Simms of the Giants. Now this card, if you look a little closer, man, this card really is beautiful. I don't know how this is a 5. Like, it's obviously off center to the right and maybe lower a little bit, like top to bottom, but it's a beautiful card. The 5, that's crazy. But Phil Simms, a 2-time Super Bowl champion. This is his 1980 Topps. And I looked at the back, there's no gum stain, and I don't know why. This is a candidate for resubmission or reholdering, so to speak. Another candidate is this Joe Montana. Now, this one I see. This one, the corner is a little dinged up, and the corner down here. This one screams 5. But at reholder, just get a newer label. Like, see how the label's like kind of warpedy looking. See how it's. But anyways, Joe Montana, pretty good. 4-time Super Bowl champion, 3-time Super Bowl MVP. He's considered the most clutch quarterback in NFL history. That's pretty good. That's a pretty good nickname. Pretty good thing to have. Speaking of pretty awesome, Dan Marino, one of the greatest quarterbacks, one of the greatest pure passers ever. This guy had a cannon, quick release. He was the first overall draft pick of the USFL, if you can believe that. He was the very first player ever drafted. And the USFL, of course, he chose to play for the Dolphins, who drafted him much later in the first round because 5 other quarterbacks went ahead of him, inexplicably, including the Jets taking Ken O'Brien, to which Dan Marino reportedly asked his agent, "Who's Ken O'Brien? I've never even heard of Ken O'Brien." Yeah. So, anyways, moving on to John Elway, 2-time Super Bowl champion. This is probably the best card of them all because it's a PSA 9. I got this graded last year. Very happy with that grade. He retired as the all-time winningest quarterback. And did you know he has a twin sister? I didn't even know that. She's not as good at throwing. He's better. He's a little bit better. He was also the second round draft pick of the New York Yankees in 1981. So, he's got that go for him. How about Steve Young? Going back to my Bucks, huh? What? Buccaneers Steve Young. Now, this was his first Topps card. So it's his Topps rookie card. But there is a USFL rookie card for Steve Young. Oh, I missed one. I meant to go back, but I'll come back. I'll go back to him. Steve Young, now follow along. This is a little bit of a story. Steve Young was a runner-up for the 1983 Heisman to Mike Rozier. Steve Young was going to BYU. Rozier was at Nebraska. He was a first-round pick by the 1984 by the USFL LA Express, Los Angeles Express. He was expected to be the first overall draft pick in the 1984 NFL draft, but the Bucks originally, listen to how the Bucks originally had that pick, the first pick of the 1984 draft, but they traded it to the Bengals for Jack Thompson, the throwing Samoan, which was a horrible idea. They traded that pick in 1983. The 1984 pick they traded in 1983. And the Bengals had Ken Anderson at quarterback. So they had that first pick, and they were going to take Steve Young, but he decided he did not want to play behind Ken Anderson. He wanted to play right away. So he went to the USFL. The Bengals ended up trading that pick to the Patriots, and the Patriots ended up drafting Irving Fryer with that first pick. Well, the USFL eventually folded, and the Bucks made Steve Young the first pick in the supplemental draft. It was a supplemental USFL CFL draft. This is in 1985, so he signed with the Bucks, and he went 3-16 over 2 years with my Buccaneers because they were horrible in the 80s, and they ended up trading him to San Francisco because we drafted Vinny Testaverde. It makes sense. That's a good trade, right? That was a good one. So Steve Young ends up becoming Joe Montana's backup. Remember, the whole reason he didn't go to the Bengals because he didn't want to back up Ken Anderson. Now he's backing up another. Well, Ken Anderson has a chance at a Hall of Fame, but Joe Montana certainly was on a track to be a Hall of Famer, and Steve Young had to back him up. Anyways, the 49ers would not trade Montana until 1993. The next year, 1994, Steve Young won the Super Bowl along with the Super Bowl MVP that year, and he was a 2-time NFL MVP, one of the all-time greats. Let's see, I'm running out of room here. All right, so I'm gonna put him over Phil Simms. Oh, so the one I wanted to go back to, 1985, Warren Moon. Now this is one I got graded through HGA because they do the horizontal cards. They do the horizontal slabs. So I love the 85 cards with the big, huge last name letters and the all the cards are horizontal pretty much. And I got it up here with the Houston Oilers colors. Pretty awesome. I like this a lot. Warren Moon, considered one of the greatest undrafted players ever. He has the 13th most passing yards of his, I think it's his NFL career, but of his pro career, certainly, because he played, I think, 4 seasons in Canada and won 3 Grey Cups, I believe. Number Well, I don't know what the number is. The next one, 1986. Again, we're going back to 1986. One of the greatest all-time football card designs. Boomer Esiason. Love Boomer. Boomer was awesome. Who doesn't like Boomer? 1988 NFL MVP and a four-time Pro Bowler. Now, Boomer was the quarterback for Sam Weish, head coach Sam Weich's Bengals. Follow along here. Sam Weish was an assistant head coach under Bill Walsh, who invented the West Coast offense in San Francisco. Bill Walsh was the offensive coordinator for Paul Brown, who was the guy that started the Cleveland Browns. They were named after Paul Brown. And then he eventually left the Browns and was the first head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals. See, it's a circle of life. I don't know how that makes sense, but it does. Oh, I hit my thing here. Okay. Speaking of the Browns, here's my boy Bernie. Another 1986. It was a great set. That 1986 set, mostly because they got a lot of guys that were from the USFL, and this was their first cards in Topps. So, Bernie Kosar, one of my all-time favorites. He was actually, when I was a teenager, he was one of those guys that in the NFL playoffs when the Broncos, John Elway had the drive and beat Bernie Kosar in 1986. It broke my heart. I was really rooting for the Browns for that. And then the next year, the Browns had the fumble by Ernest Miner, and they lost that chance. Went to 3 NFC conference championships, if you can believe that. Sorry, 3 AFC conference championships, and he lost all 3. But Bernie Kosar, pretty awesome. And he's University of Miami. Oh, so the story behind Bernie Kosar, this is interesting as well. Kosar left the University of Miami a year early, hoping to be picked by his hometown Cleveland Browns. But the Minnesota Vikings have moved up to draft him in 1985. So the Cleveland Browns got a little tricky, and they traded for the first pick in the supplemental draft with the Buffalo Bills. And that allowed Bernie basically to choose to wait through the NFL draft and get picked by the Browns in the USFL or in the supplemental draft. And it was a big controversy because the Vikings thought they deserved it because they moved up to get specifically that pick, but he didn't fully have all of his credits or something like that, or something happened where he purposely held back paperwork so he was not draft eligible when the NFL draft happened, and then he submitted it. He was eligible for the supplemental draft so that his Brownies could take him. That's a pretty cool story, right? Anyways, he'd move on to Dallas later on, help San Francisco he helped Dallas beat San Francisco in the NFC Championship game in 1990. In 1993, he was a backup to Troy Aikman, and this is just a handful of years after losing 3 AFC Championship games. Okay, moving on to Randall Cunningham. Cunningham's 942 rushing yards, another HGA card, by the way. 942 rushing yards in 1990 stood as the most rushing yards by a quarterback until Michael Vick broke that record. And then eventually Lamar Jackson broke Michael Vick's record in 2019. Now that mark stands Lamar Jackson's record at 1,206 rushing yards by a quarterback. So Randall Cunningham is a big deal because fantasy owners in the early 90s, it was the first time a quarterback, and really the only time ever, I don't know of another quarterback, to be a legit #1 overall draft pick. And Cunningham was that because of his feet and his arm. All right, so we'll put this guy down here. All right, next up we got Jim Kelly. One of my favorite all-time quarterbacks. My stepfather created the Buffalo Bills mascot, Buffalo Billy, and so I've always been a Bills fan. But Jim Kelly, 4 straight. Let's look at it like this. He was a 4-time AFC Championship game champion and a 4-time consecutive Super Bowl loser. But I like to choose to look at it as half full. That's what I do. Troy Aikman, the 1989 Topps traded Troy Aikman card. Now Aikman, a lot of people argue, oh man, how's he in the Hall of Fame? That guy, he wrote Emmitt Smith and Michael Irvin's coattails and all that good stuff. Look, Troy Aikman, 3 Super Bowls. There's only 4 quarterbacks that have won 3 Super Bowls, and he's one of them, so he gets my bid. And he's one of the greatest quarterbacks. Even though he's not in the 80s, he really had more of a 1990s career, but I consider him an 80s quarterback because he was drafted number 1 in 1989. Pretty awesome. But there are a few that I am missing from this collection. For instance, Dan Fouts. I'd like to get his rookie card. He was a great early 80s quarterback. Doug Flutie, a Heisman winner from 1983, the Hail Mary. It's all Doug Flutie. He should be, his rookie card should be in this USFL version, of course. Joe Theismann, he was a great Washington quarterback, got the Redskins a Super Bowl title in the early 80s. He should be in. I would like to get him. Vinny Testaverde, if I'm going to have my 80s Buccaneers quarterbacks, even though he was not a very good quarterback when he was with the Buccaneers, I'd love to get his rookie card and get that grade. I do have his rookie card. I just don't have it graded, actually. And then also 1971, Topps, Jim Plunkett. He won 2 Super Bowls with the Raiders in 1980 and I believe 1982. And he's currently the only player to win the Heisman, be the first overall draft pick in the NFL draft, and win Super Bowl MVP. He's the only player to ever do that. Now, there are some players who could possibly do that soon, including Joe Burrow, Kyler Murray, maybe not so much, Bryce Young. Those guys have a chance to do it. Also, Jameis Winston and Baker Mayfield. They're probably not. It's probably not going to happen for those guys. But Joe Burrow and Bryce Young, you never know. So some of the guys that I don't have on this list, Ken Stabler, he's too old for me, and Ken Anderson, who I mentioned, has a chance. CBS picked him to be in the 2024 NFL draft. Sorry, the 2024 NFL Hall of Fame inductee class. So we'll see if he gets in next year. But I don't remember much about Ken Anderson. I just remember Boomer Esiason with the Bengals. Ken Anderson was more late 70s and early 80s. But there you have it. So let me know what you think. Drop some comments below. What's your favorite card? What are these guys? Let me know in the comments. Whatever you do, have a happy hobby.
Joe Montana in the Super Bowl.